Good later evening than you may be expecting to you and your family. It is Sunday, January 12th, 7:42 p.m. This is my delayed reaction to the big win, the sizable win over Nebraska. I'm going to talk about why C.J. Cox hates the color red. I'm going to talk about Fletch Lawyer having that clever old man game. I'm going to talk about a streak that is pretty special actually, regardless of who you play. Before I do it, I want to thank our friends at AJ's. If you're at Mackey Arena and you're watching the Boilers beat up on a lesser, you should head out on Northwestern, head towards the fire station. When you get to that fire station, look to your left. You'll see the glowing blue lights. And inside there, you're going to smell wonderful food. You're going to see helpful people. And you're going to give Adam a hug. And you're going to say, boiled. You're going to just yell boiled. And he's going to seat you. You're going to get a pint. At the bottom of the pint, there's going to be a magnet. You can take it home with you. Do whatever you want. Put it on your car. Collect them. Put them in a line on your trunk. Whatever you'd like to do. EatAJs.com. Burgers, beef, beer. Excellent service. Greatest people there. AJ's. And also, if you need a sweatshirt, a hat, a t-shirt, head over to homefieldapparel.com. Enter Boiled25 at checkout for 15% off your first order. Like I said, the retro sweater is my big thing right now. It's the one I'd like to have, quite frankly. And if you're listening, Connor, send it my way. Homefieldapparel.com. So I got to go to the Nebraska Purdue game earlier today. I got to sit in the Ain't crew, where it's not exactly the paint crew. It's the quasi paint crew, but there's a lot of students in there. I got to sit with my son. Very, very cool experience. First time I think I've done that. It wasn't full strength. Obviously, you could hear that on TV. Like, whose house, our house? My son said, there's no our house. They're not giving it back to us, right? So things like that. Not quite as lathered up as you expect a Purdue home game in January with the paint crew fully there, but still a very good crowd. And you can look no further than teams out west in the league, the newbies in the league, and see how different it is for Purdue versus some of the other teams that are pretty good. It's great to be in Mackey. There are some things that give me chills. There are some things that choke me up, but especially going to 2 straight games, the fact that there's a Final Four trophy in there still gets me. It's great to see the introductions, and it's really great for me every time I get to see Purdue just kick somebody's ass, and they did it again. So on this streak, in the last 5 games, Purdue has a margin of plus 22.2 points. Plus 22.2. 4 of those games are Big Ten games. The other one is Toledo. Granted, these are not great teams. I don't think anybody's going to say that. Although Nebraska's net ranking coming into this game was 35th. That's not horrible by any means, but they're the best team in this group. Ironically, they got beaten the worst of any team in this group. Purdue looks to be a team that is hitting their stride to me. Like we talked about this after the Nebraska game. Jay talked about it after the Rutgers game. They look different. They look extremely different. And I think we can take it with a bit of grain of salt, almost like the Indiana State theorem on the football side, where you play a lesser opponent and you look really good. It may not mean that much. That said, Purdue is doing the things they didn't do before, and they're doing things differently than they did last year. That is probably the biggest thing, is that you're seeing when Purdue pulls down a rebound, they turn and go quickly. They're playing with much more pace than they did last year, I think. I'm sure there are deep analytics that could tell that story, but it looks to me like they are playing a faster brand of basketball. Today, I believe they won the rebound battle, which is refreshing because they haven't been doing that much of late. But the way they're doing it, the guards are doing a lot of the lifting and pulling. At the same time, TKR is holding his own and being very consistent. And he's not playing guys that stink. That Nicholson from Northwestern's not a bad player. And today, he was playing a 7'1" player and another guy who was younger, but 6'11", I think. It's not like they're not playing teams that don't have size or athleticism or age. This Nebraska team had some pretty darn good veterans. On top of that, they've got some guys that really know their system. I'd say the problem that Nebraska has, their biggest issue, looks to me to be depth. There's a pretty big fall off when their starters are out of the game. That said, they've got some guys on this team that you've seen in other places. A CGN or whatever his name is. He was pretty good at Wisconsin, been good at Nebraska. And Purdue really took them out of their game early. And Nebraska has this philosophy of using most of the shot clock on almost every offensive possession. And once you get down, once you get in a hole, which they did, it's really tough to come back, especially when the team does not let off the throttle. And I think if you're a Purdue fan, that's got to be one of your favorite things that you're seeing right now is they get a lead and then they just keep going. Another thing that's really interesting is we haven't seen I don't want to say perfect game yet. But we really haven't seen a perfect game yet where everybody's clicking on all cylinders. Braden Smith tonight, he didn't shoot the ball well. His assists were going everywhere, every direction on the court. He's finding the open man, doing so good at drawing in the defense when he drives and kicking it out. Tonight, CJ Cox was the biggest benefactor, and his buddy Fletch was the other one. Both of them were just raining fire from deep. But he had some problems shooting the ball. Smith did. I heard a couple people, some from BS and some on the outside, remind me that just a couple weeks ago, some of you guys in the margin, some people that know more about basketball than me do, thought it might be time to give Braden Smith a little bit of a break. And maybe tonight, when you saw that horrible shooting by Braden, you said, let's give him a break. But keep reading that box score, boys and girls. And Braden Smith will tell you that he's not limited to one skill or one category. He does a lot of things really well. He rebounds well, of course. He can dish the ball out. And his energy and toughness, it's not in the box score. It doesn't show up. Another thing that doesn't show up much in the box score is the fact that Caleb First continues to be the fuel that we were all looking for a tougher, meaner Purdue basketball team. Caleb, I don't think he's not another guy. He's another guy tonight that didn't show much in the box score. But if you're watching that thing in person, you're seeing him really take a lot of collisions, really try to set a tone early. He got the ball in the blocks early and tried to dunk, I think, twice. I think he was fouled both times to keep him from dunking. But he wanted to rip the damn thing off the glass again. But he didn't get the chance to. Instead, you had the athleticism of Miles Colvin and Cam Heide both show up in a big way and put Nebraska players on trophies as Smith continues to love. He just loves to embarrass the opponent by getting the pace even pushed harder, getting just barely across half court, and then throwing it near the rim. And one of those two guys is going to go up and get it. Cam Heide is still not playing the way I think many Purdue fans hope he will. Hold on. Do not rule out Cam Heide. If you are foolish enough to rule out Cam Heide as a scorer or as a guy that can have a big game, you haven't been paying attention at all. Because what this Purdue team seems to do and what Matt Painter teams seem to do is they wait for the right guy, the guy with the hot hand, to get the ball in his hands. And then they find him and they find him and they find him. Tonight, CJ Cox did it. He did this versus Alabama, but in a very short stint. And that's why I said, why does he hate the color red? Because versus Alabama, remember, he really turned that game. Tonight, he just kept pouring it on over and over and over, hitting a wide range of shots, but a lot from deep. He looked poised. He looked like a guy that had been around a while. You saw Jakari Harris play a different brand of basketball, playing some intense defense, locking down some veteran guys at a couple different points. And Cox as well. His defense is it's next level stuff. The switch of having the idea that you have to come and play tough every single game seems to be on for the Boilermakers. I think that's the biggest takeaway that I've got right now. And what Painter has done in the last month, you can see nothing but positives here. Anybody can be critical about him, about saying he doesn't go to the portal enough. I know there are many of you who have told me that Painter made massive mistakes this offseason in not fortifying this roster with the portal. And yet, here we are with a bunch of young players. Painter is doing what he does and develops those guys, makes them believe in the system, plugs them in, and before you know it, you've got another new look to a Purdue team. This time, this Purdue team is guard heavy, and they can pour it on teams. When they start scoring, it's a deluge. It's tough, and a lot of teams aren't going to be able to survive that. And it's very, very different from what we saw last year. Last year, it was the security blanket of, you need a bucket, you know where to go. Every time you're going to have Superman there. Well, this year, there's not one Superman. There's a bunch of guys that are just, I don't want to say pit bulls just yet. We're not there, but you got a bunch of competitors in the backcourt. It's fun to see. Let's look at the stats together, why don't we? And see if they back up my opinions on the game. Purdue wins 104-68. They improved to 13-4 on the season, 5-1 in conference. Like I said, they beat a Nebraska team that wasn't horrible. They were coming off a loss versus Iowa. But they were 35th in the net. Now, if you want to look at the other teams, I can go a little bit deeper in that. The only team that's really done well after they got whipped by Purdue is Toledo. Toledo's gone on a 3-game winning streak in conference, but granted, they're playing lesser opponents. The other teams, it almost seems like Purdue broke them because you have in that group of 5, you've got a couple that are on pretty significant losing streaks now that they've had their confidence shaken and stirred. And Purdue has really been dealing out the whippings. The thing that's rough is next, in 3 days, the 15th, Purdue goes to Washington, which is a game that, while it's a long trip, Purdue should be able to handle their business versus Washington. But then you go to Oregon for the first real test, second real test of the Big Ten after the Maryland game early in the season, where Purdue passed that test by really scratching and clawing. Let's see what they can do versus Oregon, which a lot of people thought looked elite until as recently as, a week ago. Things change quickly. Oregon is struggling a little bit, but this schedule starts to get pretty beefy here in the next 2 weeks. And I would say, if you're going to say it's too early to judge if Purdue's that good of a team, that's fine. I understand that. But the 20th ranked Boilers look to me to be what I thought they were early in the season. Again, a 15th to 20th ranked team in America, a team that's knows their identity, which is a big thing. They really know what they are. So, like I said, Trey Kaufman ran very, very solid game in just 27 minutes of play. He had 15 points, 6 boards, 7 assists, a steal. And no turnovers. And he was getting rocked a little bit. If you watch the way Nebraska was trying to play physical with him, they brought a couple guys at him, tried to beat him up a little bit. The really interesting thing about that is the game, there were hardly any fouls for a long chunk of time. And because of that, Purdue didn't go to the free throw line hardly at all. Only went 6 times. They only shot 50%, 3 of 6. At the same time, on the other side, Nebraska, this is what you think the formula for a team to win should be, something like this. Hit 90%, hit 91% of your free throws. Well, that's a start. Everything else Nebraska did poorly. And Purdue, what they did is they did the same thing they've been doing against everybody in the Big Ten so far. Well, since the Christmas break. What they're doing is they are closing out three-point shooters better than they have in years. And I think if you really want to say what's the difference in this Purdue team, it's that. They are not letting teams get hot. There's something these coaching staff has figured out. They can get a hand in these faces, and it can be much more effective than in the past years where guys were rotating out of double teams and doing different things on defense. They're getting out and closing out threes in an incredible way. I think that's the biggest thing. They do not let teams get hot from three, and it is killing their opponents. On top of that, the defense, the passing lane defense by Braden Smith and company, the ability for Purdue to use some athleticism up at the top, it's killing teams. Another team with turnover struggles. This time it's Nebraska, 17 turnovers. Purdue turned the ball over 10 times, but you have to take all the stats are really interesting. Purdue beats the hell out of this team by almost 40 points, right? And Smith was out of the game with 10 minutes left. I mean, it's pretty wild. And you got to see a future lineup. I called that on Twitter, where you had, what was it? Let's see. They had Burgess, Harris, Colvin, Heidi, and Cox at one point. So you saw a glimpse of what the team could look like in 2 years after TKR and Smith and Lawyer are all gone. That lineup looks pretty interesting to me. They're not fully baked yet, but they look pretty interesting, and they look intense. And the other thing you got to see, and a lot of the Mackey faithful love seeing Waddell score a couple times. He got 5 points. Seeing Miles Colvin, very interesting moment. Miles Colvin hit a 3. He turned around, and it looked to me, I was in the stadium, and I've heard 2 different stories. One person said he did a shotgun motion towards the Nebraska bench. That's what the ref thought, and they called the tech. But what another person said was he did the Spider-Man, like shooting webs, because he looks like Miles Morales. I've said that before, and I think that's pretty funny, pretty clever. I don't know the truth, and maybe you guys do. Maybe that's been talked about on other outlets. I haven't watched any of the post-game comments. I haven't watched anybody else yet. I just came on here right after I got home. So, but regardless, it was a tech. There was a stanza where the refs kind of lost their crap for a minute, made a couple bad calls back to back to back. But really, the refs weren't even a factor because Purdue just took the game out of everybody's hands and they said, okay, this is the way the game's going to be played. This pace, this direction, this is what we're going to do, and we're not going to let you do anything you want to do on the other side. Caleb First had his first quiet game in a while. Just 2 points, like I said, but 3 boards. Only played 20 minutes. But, again, his importance in the starting lineup, I think, is setting a tone of toughness, and he's doing it. And I am stoked about this little tweak to this lineup, how much of a difference it has made. We'll see if it can keep going. But like I said, he was playing against big guys, and he's playing against vets, and he's holding his own every single game. He looks really good. CJ Cox led all Boilermakers, 23 points, 4 boards, 2 assists, 4 steals. 4 steals. And this is maybe we're seeing the glimpses of what's going to make this guy really, really special, is how complete of a player he can become. One thing I'd say is he's quick, but I've had some interesting comparisons. Talking to my buddy Handel. I mentioned Chad Austin. He mentioned Willie Dean. I'd say you can mention Boogie Edwards at times because he's so flammable. But if you want to look a little glimpse into what other Boiler does he remind you of, might be one of those guys. And that's pretty good elite company for Purdue guard play, obviously, especially for a true freshman to play the way he's playing. If you compare him to Edwards, which is the freshest memory you've got of any of those guys, he's different because he doesn't take bad shots. He just doesn't. Edwards took every shot that he felt like taking, especially as a freshman. And he paid for it on the bench, especially 2/3 of the way through that freshman year. Paid for it a little bit sophomore year too. But CJ Cox doesn't do that. In fact, he probably doesn't force enough. He had a couple where he was wide open and he waited. He had another one where he beat the shot clock. Oh, I know what it was. He came down and the Nebraska defense was in a back pedal. They tried to switch. He didn't want to shoot it. You could tell. He was on the right side, right elbow at the 3-point line. And they backed off him completely. And he just kind of looked around. I said, okay, I'll take it. So wide open shot in rhythm. He hits it. He takes very good shots and he makes a lot of them. He's the kernel of a budding star. Pretty amazing stuff. Braden Smith, like I said, pretty quiet. Well, let's look. CJ Cox, one more thing. 9 for 11 from the field. 5 for 7 from deep. Goodness gracious. Incredible game. Braden Smith didn't shoot the ball well. Only 3 for 8 from the field. 8 points, but 14 assists. He had, I think, 9. He had 8 or not 8. Hit 8 at the half. And he could add more, but Purdue pulled the plug very early. And finally, Fletch Lawyer, 19 points on 7 of 12 shooting, 5 for 6 from 3. And Fletch, the thing that's great about him, and I've talked about this a couple times recently, the old man game, the clever game, whatever you want to talk, he's doing things that are creating shots that are very unorthodox. I don't know if it's getting enough run among Purdue fans, the way he is scoring. He's creating very differently than he did a year ago. He's not trying to go into the teeth of the defense without understanding the situation. He's going away from getting swallowed up by a power forward in the center. He's coming back, doing some nifty stuff, some kind of old school game. I love it. And it's paying off for Purdue and for Lawyers specifically. Sam King got to play. He got 2 points. Cam Heide had 2 big points, a reverse alley-oop dunk. Raleigh Burgess, 5 points and a couple of boards. Let's see. I'm going to mention all these guys because why not? Will Berg got in the game. The crowd loves Will Berg. He got 2 points. Jace Rail gets just 1 point. He got a free throw. Every time he touched the ball, Purdue fans went crazy, and I think it's going to be even better when the paint grows at full steam. Jakari Harris, 6 points on 2 of 3 from 3. And he also had 4 assists and 2 boards. And like I said, Miles Colvin, 14 points and a rebound. Great effort all around. This is a pretty easy job to talk about a team that's this dynamic, and this offense is absolutely dynamic, and this defense is monstrous. Make no bones about it. But on the 15th, Purdue gets a bigger test as they start a weird West Coast road trip. The first time we've ever seen this in the history of conference play for our Boilermakers, as they play at Washington and then at Oregon. Well, a lot of you guys are here making comments. Appreciate you being here. IC is first and says first and spells it the way of our friend Caleb's last name. Adam P says hello. C. Metzger says early evening Cox talk. Yeah, I will talk about Cox all the time. I'm a big Cox talk guy. Chris B says, greetings, be Dowd. Another stress-free game at Mackey. We'd love to see it. It was great. It was... I could have him every time, and it's not going to get old for me. Kevin in Albuquerque says, good evening, Dowd. It's good to see that we're figuring out both ends of the court. Yeah, it's really fun to see. And just jumping off on the last point as well, it's just fun to be there to see so many neat things, different things happening. Every game you can pick something out and try to, focus in on what's happening a little bit different. Tonight, of course, you have CJ Cox making his presence known to the college basketball world. If they didn't pay attention to the Alabama game, he may have their attention now. So fine, D him up, sag off Smith a little bit more, sag off Lawyer a little bit more. See how that goes for you. Should be a lot of fun. It's pretty amazing too how different he looked versus. Let's go back to the game that I remember more than anyone, where he looked like a deer in the headlights. Was that Marquette game, his first road game? He's grown up a lot, and he's going to grow up more. But the next 2 weeks are going to be really important for his development. Jeff Nestor says, fun game today. Chris B says, yes, the defense is great to watch. I'm very encouraged to see this team play so well against mid and lower tier part of the conference, which will prepare them for the Dogs later on. Yes, and this Big Ten schedule, it's very unusual. I think the games before Christmas, Maryland specifically provided a good challenge, and Penn State beat the living hell out of Purdue. Still doesn't make sense. That game doesn't make sense. Purdue gets made fun of on Twitter by a lot of people that probably couldn't play basketball, but they like to make fun of Purdue for that game. It's a fair point. Penn State's not that good of a team. But after that, after Christmas, it's been kind of a launch pad of a season, right? A launch pad of a Big Ten schedule where Purdue is getting better. They're getting the opportunity to get better, to take advantage of teams that aren't on their level, and they're doing it like we've never seen, honestly, consistently to do this. Think about a couple years ago, before, even when, let's go back from when Ivy was still on campus, and Purdue would have times where that it was cold, right? They just wouldn't shoot well. The defense wasn't cohesive. This team doesn't have those issues. If they're not hitting shots, they go to the hoop, right? They go and they draw fouls and they get buckets like they did last game. And if they don't need to do that, they'll start bombing away, hitting threes. And then TKR, I'll tell you what, TKR is a little teardrop. I made a joke at LBD, and I'm going to share it with you. I said, TKR makes more teardrops than me watching The Notebook. It's a sensitive side of B-Dowd. Thought I'd share it with you. But I don't cry at The Notebook. Or do I? Zachary Welch says, it's safe to say the top 5 in the Big Ten are MSU, Purdue, Illinois, and Oregon. I think it's pretty safe to say. Michigan is a tough team, and Michigan's going to really test Purdue with those 2 7-footers. Michigan State has found new life, period. They got guys who can score from all over the floor. Illinois has shown some inconsistency, but what's the guy with the extra long name? Looks really, really good. And Oregon, until recently, they look perfect, right? They look great. But I think that creates a pretty good log jam at the top of the Big Ten. The good news is, well, you could put, in spite of what IU did last night, they looked pretty good according to their record, but they looked really, really lousy last night. And did they struggle versus Nebraska, or did they handle them? I can't remember. I think they struggled. It doesn't matter. I think I watched that game. I just don't remember. So, because my brain's not good. Adam P says, like Miles' attitude, seems to be getting his confidence back. Nice to see a variety of bench players. Yeah, it was great. Motor City Boiler says 9th. Does that mean 9th commenter? That's pretty awesome, if that's what you're saying. That's anybody can be first. Very few can be 9th. Nate Dolan says, revenge game from last year. Yeah. Tominaga is gone. Yeah, there's a lot to like. The funny thing about, I don't know if you guys see this, when you see Fred Hoiberg on the sideline, do you think he just got out of gym class? Just like the Iowa State coach, similar dress, similar look. And his son, when he's warming up, looked like a gymnast, not a basketball player, because he had pants on. He's kind of yoked. He's got a silly sweatband, but he doesn't look like his dad playing, I can tell you that much. But he played a lot of minutes today. I don't know how normal that is. Karen Grulock, she was worried that I had bailed on you guys, but she says, worry about how much we match up with Michigan State and Michigan and Oregon. It's all going to be rough. That being said, I love watching this team, Fletcher and TKR. Yeah, I think you're going to say you're Fort Wayne boys. And they've been pretty formidable, that group. I feel a lot better about matching up with about anybody than I did 3-4 weeks ago, right? I think as Purdue fans, you kind of have to, but they're going to get tested. That's going to happen. The real question is, can they get tested by an athletic? These are the teams that bother me. The athletic backcourts with very, very seasoned veterans, 23, 24-year-old guys who are athletic and aggressive. Those are the ones that really kicked Purdue when they were down. So let's see how they can do now with some new tools in the toolbox, in the toolkit, and see if they can number one, teach themselves they can hang with them, and number two, finish a game and get the victory. And that's worlds away from where they were just weeks ago. KMKV6 says, I love seeing the big grin on Caleb's face as he sat with the other starters in the end of the game. He has stepped up big time. Yeah, he looks like a different player. It's great to see. By the way, Purdue is 23rd in the net, in case you're curious about that. They're 20th in the poll. My guess is they'll go up to 18th, maybe 17th after this dominant week. But it'd be better if they had played a couple teams that were more noteworthy in the polls, but we're not so fortunate there. KMK KV6, give me some names that I can read. Says I agree with the pace has increased tremendously, increased turnovers, but also having CJ take on more ball handling helps. Yeah, there was a pretty neat before they did that future lineup. There was a pretty cool look where you had CJ Cox playing point guard, I think in the first half for a few minutes. Of course, you did see it in the second half. But yeah, you can see that they can spell Smith a little bit more, which is great. And Smith probably appreciated it tonight because when you're not feeling it, it's tough. But he's a guy who wanted to get back in rhythm. He had a very, very deep three, I think, was it in the first half? Can't remember. I'll go back and watch highlights. Maybe I'll have some thoughts for you guys later. Zach Young says, shooting imaginary spider webs is a technical foul. So it was a shooting imaginary spider web. It was interesting. Painter it looked like he was trying to explain to the ref he wasn't making a shotgun motion. The refs, I got this thing. I can't stand it when after a dead ball, after an official's made a horrible call, comes up and gets right in the face of a player and tries to explain and be like his uncle or his dad. I'm just like, shut up, man. You missed a call. You did a bad job. Don't make it worse by trying to be all sensitive. And it really, really sucks when it's a close game. Hadn't sucked that much recently. So, it was a bad call. Karen Grulock says, all hail to Caleb. So happy for him. Colvin, Cam look good. Zach Welch said, he's got talking to somebody else. Ted Berkey says, that was fun. Agreed. And he continues, this team is developing, will be dangerous next year. They're dangerous right now, Ted. That's where my perspective has changed a lot. I think this team is becoming pretty dangerous this year, but I still think of this year as a transitional year. I think this team is going to be salty next year. I think there's no doubt about it. And they've got that formula that has helped, and I don't want to get too into the thing that I think is really special just yet, but, the guard heavy, aggressive mindset guards. When the ball is in their hands, they can burn you off the dribble. They can shoot from deep. Purdue's got a handful of them. And some of you guys who had written this team off and left for dead, and I know you're Purdue fans. I don't see any of you guys in here right now talking that crap about how Purdue was not athletic and they couldn't do it. You've seen what Purdue does against teams that are less than athletic. Purdue is not an unathletic team. And to say a Purdue team's unathletic with both Heidi and Colvin on the team, first part, is incredible. I think those are two of the best athletes Purdue's ever had in the basketball program. Their quickness, their first step, their ability to get off the court, pretty unprecedented stuff. And then on top of that, you've got Harris, who's developing, Cox is developing. Smith is an incredible athlete. If you don't see that, you don't watch enough basketball. He's a little shorter, but he's got long arms, great reach, gets off the court really quickly. He makes teams pay because he can rebound the deep ball and then push it the other way. And if he's so unathletic, how does he make people look stupid game after game? It makes them look flat out dumb. These are Division I athletes. A lot of them are a lot older than him, 3-4 years older than him. He's making them look dumb. Yet some Purdue fans don't appreciate him. That pisses me off. We should all appreciate the fact that Fletch and Smith, I keep saying this, I'm going to keep beating this drum until there's no more people talking about it. What they have done is incredible. The fact that they've started every game of their career as juniors is nuts. Thorogood says Purdue will win the Big Ten. Braden will win the Wooden. Crazy 3 years. I'm not there yet. That's a lot. That's going a lot, but I love it. I love the optimism. I'm not there yet. So, Let's see. Bendover says, fun to watch today. Portal this, portal that. These young guys are taking strides, and it's fun to watch them grow. I have an odd feeling the ceiling of this team is trending upward. It's gone way up. Season started that looked kind of a normal 7.5, 8 foot ceiling, like an older house, maybe an old ranch. It's getting up there to 9, 9.5, 10. Yeah, ceiling is definitely going up. Need to be inverse. How are you, sir? Good to see you. Nebraska was ranked 33rd in Ken Palm going into this game, 35th in the net. Didn't realize that. Great win against a tough team. Yeah, they lost to Iowa. Iowa seems to have found something in one of their guards recently. But yes, that wasn't a pushover team that Purdue just beat by 40. That's the wild thing. Chris B says, looked like a Spider-Man to me. Agreed. KMKV6 says he did the spider web, but the other player, that was the issue. Yeah, because it's so offensive to have a spider web shot at you. Imaginary spider web is, boy, that's egregious stuff. IC says it was the same celebration Braden always does. Well, that's the one he does where he's got ice water in his veins. It was not that celebration. They called the tech as directed right at Connor Asigian. Yeah, I think it's a crap tech. I'm glad he did it. Brian T says, I'm starting to get cautiously optimistic about March, given what Cox is contributing. Brian, let me remind you a classic Boiler Dowdism for right now. Enjoy the journey. Enjoy the process. This is a fun team to watch grow up, and it's gotten a lot funner, a lot more fun in the last few days, last few weeks. But enjoy the process. Let's not look too far ahead. And think about how it was just a month and a half ago. It wasn't very fun to look forward to games. You're like, oh man, I don't know what this team's doing, right? They don't look like they can improve. I remember having these discussions with Handel and other people about, I don't know how they can improve other than time, meaning getting guys reps, and they've improved a lot. The rotation has changed things a lot. Need to be inverse says Purdue blows teams out 100% of the time when B-Dowd is in the arena this season. Coincidence? I think not, my friend. I think that's the trick. I wish I could claim some credit for it, but yeah, it was fun. And glad you and I both got to see the one blowout. Thorogood says, imagine Fletch at the Y in 20 years. Fletch is going to have a long NBA career. He looks like a lot of guys that Purdue has played in the past. There's a guy that I'm reminded of, Nick Stauskas from Michigan. If you want to look at a guy that, I don't know how long Stauskas' NBA career was, but Fletch is really clever, and he can shoot. If you give him any space at all, he can shoot. He hit a couple today where he didn't have space, right on a guy's head. And yeah, he's developing a lot of tools. It looks like he's a guy that's worked a lot harder than he gets credit for. Yeah. Fletch deserves some flowers right now. Dave Brunner says we're back. I don't know if we ever left. How are you? Good to see you. I'll be off in a minute. John Roberts says perhaps the best game to watch all year. Maybe there will be more. I am positive there's going to be more that are fun to watch. And John continues, what's more amazing, watching Fletch do a teardrop or use the glass? How about TKR use the glass on the baseline? That's one of the most incredible shots that I've seen in a long time. He did it from the right side, and it was coming towards me, but I don't know which end of the court that was. It was one of the best bank shots I've ever seen from about, 8-10 feet. Incredible. TKR as a technician, as a basketball technician, can you think of another Boiler who's either a power forward or center that resembles his attention to detail and his ability to do the little things? The little teardrop he's got, and Fletch has it too, but it is so effective with TKR because they want to guard the rim on him. They don't want him to get any close, so they'll tend to lag back. And it was like, if you're going to give me that space, I'll take the 7-10 footer all day long. And he must be hitting it about 65-70% of the time this season. He is an absolute assassin. He's a technician. He's different than Purdue big men. I'd say Travion Williams had a little bit of that technician in him. He has more of it now as a pro. If you watch some of his highlights or some of his games, I think he's in Germany right now. No, is he in Israel? He's in Israel. He was in Germany. And another guy that had some of that technician thinking was AJ Hammonds. But AJ Hammonds didn't seem to play as hard as TKR. So this is a good mix of skills. And he's not getting a lot of credit either. These juniors are great, truly great. is the emergence of Cox. Who's Johnny says, oh, wait, this jumped me way down. Indian Colorado says Nebraska beat IU. Okay, there you go. So there you go. Thank you. Appreciate the correction. So Nebraska beat IU. IU lost by 25 last night. They're on the struggle bus a little bit, but let's not get too far ahead of that. Let's enjoy this game right now. But you said, who's Johnny says, for sure, dangerous now. The emergence of Cox has made Purdue a contender. I think Purdue being a contender for the Big Ten title never really went away, but there were some confident or overly confident fans, not coaches, that started believing that Purdue was an also-ran. Purdue's far from an also-ran. We're going to see it proven here in the next couple of weeks. John Timmons says, if Cox can be consistent after this, we could get another big title. Absolutely. They're right there. Who's Johnny says, I don't understand how people think Fletch isn't athletic. Fletch is sneaky, and I don't mean to rain on your parade here. Fletch is athletic, but he's sneaky. He does enough to create space. He's incredible at popping in and popping out, doing a little fadeaway, going off 1 foot. His game is clever. I don't think he's the most athletic guy, so I'll counter you a little bit. The guys, to me, when I say athleticism, what I look at is quick off the court. How quickly do they jump? How quickly can they get above the rim? What's their first step look like? How's their lateral quickness? I don't think of Fletch with those things. But I do think Fletch is one of the most clever players, and he's one of the most annoying players to the opponent. So we can discuss that among friends. I think that's okay. But he's athletic enough. That's for damn sure. So Blake Marty says, absolutely right about Fletch and Braden. Thanks. Who's Johnny says, to me right now, Cox reminds me of a Lance upgrade. That's a big statement. Lance Jones. The mentality that Cox and Lance share is that if they have the ball in their hand, I think Lance was a little better at this, saying, yeah, I'll rip your throat out, right? Or rip your heart out, however you want to say it. Cox is getting that. They both have a shooter's mentality. Cox's confidence is going to be incredible. He's going to be super special. And Painter, and I think Painter said, he saw him at a tournament. He's like, that's the guy I want. Painter's ability to find, he's not a diamond in the rough, because he wasn't in the rough. He was just in a difficult place. Massachusetts doesn't produce a ton of guys that are blue chips or whatever. So he gets a 3-star ranking or rating, whatever. Purdue steals him. And now that dude's a Boilermaker. So I think I saw his car today. I found a car not far from Mackey Arena, Massachusetts tags on it. And then the dealership on the small SUV was right near where he grew up. And my son and I kind of think, that's got to be his car. So I like the human part of basketball. These aren't just robots playing. These are guys that live around the corner from Mackey Arena. Let's see. Who's Johnny says, I actually felt bad for Hoiberg. I didn't feel bad for Hoiberg. I thought that guy should have been fired a couple of years ago. I thought they saved him 2 seasons ago, I think. Had a pretty good season last year. Tominaga is great. He was awesome. Hoiberg owes Tominaga a little bit of money, in my opinion, but I don't feel bad for him. I think the mayor's he's had a great career regardless as a coach in pros and college. He's a good career, period. I like the guy too, but I didn't feel bad for him. Kevin Jonas says, this fun team to watch. Stay cautiously optimistic, but it's fun to watch for sure. You're 100% on point about Lawyer and Smith. We'll miss them terribly when they graduate. And let's hope that transition is super smooth as the handing of the torch. We get to see a little bit of it slowly to Harris and maybe Benter. I was thinking about him today. And of course, Cox. And there's another guy that's coming in. I can't remember his name right now, but I think there's a lot to be excited about. I know a lot of people asked me the question, were you worried? Are you worried that Purdue hasn't done more in the portal? No, I hope you guys understand this. I'm not worried about that idea at all. Until Painter proves to me that he can't cut it doing the system he wants to do, meaning we're going to prioritize academics, and do they love Purdue, and do they just want to compete? Is winning enough? He asks that question all the time, because a lot of guys come to Purdue and they're willing to take a second seat, if you want to say, pilot terms, or a back seat in the car. lose a starting role because they're just like, okay, I believe that this is what the team needs. Coach sees this, we're going to try this, and they buy in. That's a competitor's mentality, and it's very, very countercultural right now. So until Purdue does something that makes me think that this philosophy doesn't work, there's no way in hell I'm jumping on that bandwagon saying he needs to go and throw it all into the portal. I disdain the portal. I know some good things have come out of it, but I sure as hell don't want to see a program that's completely built on the portal. I know we're seeing football right now on the other side, and I haven't done my reaction piece yet, but Purdue has to do that in football. They're in a completely different situation. Purdue's philosophy and the things that make them special in basketball are totally stable. They're totally solid. In a rebuild or a transitional year, I know some of you got really angry at the idea that there's a 2-year plan. That's a dumb thing to me too. The Illinois with their 1-year rolling plan, because I think that's what a lot of you guys are referring to who are picking at Painter this one. What have they done? What have they done? They didn't win the Big Ten title last year with their rolling, going out and getting superstars. I mean, Painter still got him. He's still got Underwood. He's still better than Underwood, in my opinion. So regardless of what anybody says on the internet, I'm not ready to buy that stuff yet. I'm not buying that. Who's Johnny said, this is a good point. Let's see. Oh yeah. Josette says, don't start with the flower shit. Yeah, no, I like that. I like saying that. So I regret nothing. I regret nothing there. Jeff Nestor says, what's the maximum losses in the Big Ten to win conference? About 4. It's going to be 4 or 5. I think that's a fair bet based on hashtag funner. Says they're good. Yeah, really good job by me. Yeah, I said 4 or 5. Let's say this year, let's make it. I think it's 5. I think Big Ten's going to start beating up on itself pretty good, and Purdue will take a couple lumps during that period. That's my prediction. So we'll see how it looks at the end, but good running start so far. Michael says, hey, Boiler Dowd, how are you doing tonight? Let's say it was fun to watch starters have fun, watch the reserves play today. This is an absolute clinic. It was a fun game to watch. It was fun to watch in person. It sounds like it was super fun on TV. I love watching games on TV. Not that I don't like being a Mackey. I love being a Mackey, but there's something pretty magical about being on your own couch and being able to get up. And if you want to grab a bourbon, if you want to grab a non-alcoholic beverage, if you want to pop yourself some popcorn, it's a lot cheaper and easier. So convenience matters. Being around the people you love matters. And unless you've got just a ton of money, taking your whole family to a game is pretty crippling financially. Even if you get a good deal like I did. So Ty Am Daily says, today was a fun game to watch. Need more Heidi and Colvin alley-oops. Yeah, I gotta tell you, this is one thing I remember a couple years ago. Before Ivy, I used to lament the fact that Purdue didn't have guys that created big time highlights on, the national stage. I don't know if you guys get bothered by that or that's anything that you care about, but I always liked seeing commercials where other teams were, athletic alley-oops or just absolutely yamming on somebody with a big, strong dude. Well, guess what? My prayers have been answered. You got Caleb First dunking on a guy who's a future NBA lottery pick. You've got Zach Edey for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, terrorizing people. Ivy, years ago, absolutely looked the part of an NBA player. Turns out he is. He's recovering nicely, by the way. And now you've got guys in a handful of Purdue players that can do a lot of special stuff. So it's pretty fun to see the athleticism turn up, regardless of what some Purdue fans see. Ben Carnahan says, good to see you, Dowd. Hope you're doing well, as well as our Boilers today. I don't think I'm doing that well, but I am doing very well. Thank you. Let's see. Jeff Nestor says, since we have no bigs coming in for 2025 recruiting class, get an athletic big from the portal and round out our national championship team. Okay, so I think I started touching on this the other day. I'm not going to say you're wrong. I think Purdue's going to be forced. I just think there's going to be 1 or 2 departures. Regardless, you're going to have 1 or 2 departures from the team just because of the way things are happening. Not because guys saying they're upset, but I think it'll be more that we've seen Painter do this in the past where he said to guys, I don't know if you're going to get the playing time that you deserve with the way the roster is designed right now. And then it puts the ball in their court. But I think that could happen with a couple guys that haven't developed quite as much as Paint thought they would. And so I think he's pretty fair with his conversations. If they want to stay around, then I don't think he's going to make anybody leave, but I do think he helps those guys get placed in a program where they can get some playing time. And I think there's a couple that'll change. Let's see. Michael JB says, great game, more defense and less Steve Bardo. Bardo was at this one too. He was at a game. He was at the Northwestern game a week ago too. Bardo makes me nuts. I think he's not good at his job. Ancient Atomic Immortality says, dude, Heidi and Colvin's dunks were practically identical. Yeah. Check out the Boiled Sports Twitter feed. I put them side by side. Crockover photography, Chad Crockover, I think is his name. One of the incredible creatives in the Purdue athletic department. Took pictures from the same angle of the Miles and the Cam dunk. And gracious, they were awesome. Heidi works out, I think, guys. Dude is freaking jacked. That picture, check it out on the Boiled Sports Twitter feed. He's a beast. I know he's not a very good athlete. I know some Purdue fans told me that a little bit ago. So, Who's Johnny says, I'll be curious to see where Benter fits in next season with Colvin and Heidi. Yeah, he's a pretty athletic guy. He's a good finisher. He can shoot. Not a lot not to like. So we'll see. I think that's the funny thing. This Purdue team, it's becoming guard heavy. It doesn't matter. I don't know how you can analyze it any other way. So they are going to need, I think they're going to need, and they're going to get a player or two from the portal. The question is, this is where the magic of what Matt Painter has decided to do. Can he get another guy that was such a good fit as Lance Jones? There's some magic in that idea, right? And, but having a guy that wants to come in and is humble enough off the court, but absolutely not humble on the court. That's a tough mix to find, right? Really tough to find. So can he do that? We'll see. Daniel Nelson says, Braden and Fletch spoiled us. Crazy how different CJ and Jakari play at home versus on the road. Yeah, that's a freshman trait, right? And that's why CJ and Fletch, or pardon me, Braden and Fletch are just different birds. So we'll see if Jakari and Cox become something else by the end of the season where they can handle the rigors of a road game. We'll see. I think we're already seeing some hints that they can get better, and they are getting better. I think that's it for tonight. That's nothing close to a quick cast. 48 minutes. Ted Berkey says, remember, we should be up to a 15 scholarship limit next year. Absolutely. Wonder how that will impact the rosters. Yes, so it will impact the roster. It will impact the roster. The question is, will that make it so if a guy wants to stay, Painter just says, yeah, stay. But that doesn't change the fact that you're not going to get as much playing time. And I think because of filling that roster, I think that's where regardless, you're going to have 2 or 3 guys from the portal. So hopefully, there are some guys that I've seen play that, Purdue recruited that didn't land at Purdue for one reason or another. Some of those guys, I think, regret their decision. That's fine. The hardest thing that I have to swallow about the portal is the guys that have gone 3 or 4 places. And I'm just like, man, this can't be. I mean, some of them are getting bags of cash. That's cool. But having an experience where you're at a place and you develop, and I'm sure everybody's looking for magic if it doesn't go according to their plan. I know they all are. But that's not a fun existence, jumping around all the time. It's not fun. I heard about a transfer recently. I know where he was living. I'm not going to tell much more than that, but he's a football transfer, and he did pretty well in the transfer portal and left everything. And I don't know if he came back in secret and, like when everybody was out there and grabbed a couple things, but it looked like all the stuff other than his clothing was still there. It's so weird. The whole idea is so weird. And it's so the opposite of this. I know athletes had a different college experience than I do. I didn't have any money in college. I can remember going across, there was an ATM, an NBD ATM across from Mackey. Maybe some of you remember this, who were in the 90s. And I'd go over there and I'd check my balance before drawing money out. If I had $10, I would draw out 5. You could do $5 increments. And then I'd go to Beepers right there where Burger King and was it Mad Mushroom were right there, I think. And I'd get a Beeper sandwich. These guys are getting hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars. It's such a different existence. That's all. And I know I sound like a naive ninny or whatever, but yeah. Ancient Atomic Immortality says this was a Purdue football transfer out. Yes. Yes, it was. So, but I bet he's not alone in the way he handled that too, because it's so fast in that they don't have much of a window for when they decide to go in the portal. I'm sure there's tampering with a lot of these guys. I didn't get that idea that he was tampered with before, but they decide, they go, maybe they visit, maybe they do it all on the phone. I don't know how this works, but some of them, it just happens so rapidly. And then when they're gone, they got to go to the next place and get started with workouts and start getting acclimated with their new coaches and teammates. Wild though, wild. Hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line. I guess leaving a crappy college furniture, maybe that's not a big deal, but I think there was stuff other than that too. So it's crazy. So, Michael says he remembers the MBD bank being there. Let's see. Zach Welch says, any chance for Purdue football cast? Yes, there's a chance. There's a good chance. I want to do a reaction piece when I've dug in deeper to the players that Purdue has signed in the portal, because I don't even understand what each guy's about. I know they've gotten some really good wide receivers, got a very good running back from Virginia Tech, got a bunch of young quarterbacks, but I don't understand the roster very well. I'm sure the coaches are doing a great job probably compartmentalizing or grouping the guys out. But as a fan, I'm having a really hard time keeping up with it. I'm sure some of you guys are much better at it. So I need to go and dig into some stats and do some comparisons, because what I'm seeing, this is my big theory, and I'll see if it plays out. But what I'm seeing is this year, it looks to me like Odom went after guys in the portal who had actually produced for the most part. I know there was a guy just came out. He's from a very good program who only played in 2 games, and he got shelved because of injury. But that's not the way Walters did it. Walters went after guys who were really high recruits and hadn't panned out yet. And so they looked the part. They just looked like specimens. But then they hadn't proven anything on the football field. It feels like Odom's going after guys that have proven things already, and they're looking for one more chapter because he knows that he needs instant impact because of the state of things, how depleted he was left of a roster. One interesting thing is C.J. Smith went from Purdue to Memphis. I don't know if you saw that. C.J. Smith has played in, 6 games a year for the last 2 years and hasn't produced much, has not had a lot of production. But he went from Georgia to Purdue to Memphis. I know Memphis much better record last year than Purdue, but I would say program-wise, he's taking steps down. I hate seeing that for a guy. So that's about it. Ancient Atomic Immortality says, buy new clothes with that NIL. Yeah, no question. Buy nice new clothes. Some of these guys get designer deals. Remember Gillis had, he had a clothing deal. I saw the other day. He's LBD and I were talking about Gillis. He's at Duke now. He's averaging 13 minutes a game playing. I think it was time for him to go. I think that's the way it was spelled out for he and Morton. But Gillis specifically, he's not playing a ton. He's shooting the 3 ball much worse. I think he's down in the 20s. So I kind of hate that. Again, I hate that. I hate the fact he went to Duke. I can't stand Duke. So Joe says, invite Coach Odom on the podcast to cover the roster. It's a good idea. I've thought about doing that a couple times, but I'm not really much of an interviewer. Maybe I could do it. I don't know. But I don't think I could do both this and that, if that makes sense. It'd have to be like a separate show, and then I'd come on, do a reaction to it. It's not a bad idea. He seems like a pretty good guy. I think he and I would get along well. And especially over the internet, he would think maybe that they would see more eye to eye, and literally we wouldn't see eye to eye because of me being 5'4". So, can't stand Duke. Ty. So that's about it. Have a great day. That's the longest goodbye. I'm not good at goodbyes. Love you guys. Good night. Hammer down. Talk to you soon. See ya.